All right, girl, let me set the tone for you, okay? So it's summer of 1965, and Alice Crimmins, is newly single. She has two children, and she's recently divorced from her husband of a short time. She's only been married to him for a short time. She has a daughter and a son, and she's known around her block to be a really good mother. She's considered to be a good neighbor. People really like her. Her neighbors really like her, and she lives in this close-knit community in Brooklyn, in the Bronx. And a lot of people say that this is like a family type of vibe in the neighborhood. So setting the tone for you. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows everybody's business. So there's a lot going on in the summer of 1965 for. So apparently dating in the 60s was considered to be like a big taboo. Like, as a divorced mother, single mother, she was not expected to have a dating life. And not much has really changed as far as society's view on that type of it's just society's view on that type of behavior. Like, a lot of times single mothers are judged way more harshly than the fathers who have contributed to fatherlessness or a lack of a father in the home. Mothers are scrutinized with a ridiculous amount of scrutiny, more so than fathers are. So not much has changed, but in the 60s it was apparently like a really big scandal for her to be dating all these different men, according to her neighbors and people who knew her. So herein is our story. This is where the story gets a little dicey. On July 14th, 1965, Alice Crimmins takes her children. She says it describes the day as picturesque, almost perfect the way she sets the scene. I mean, she takes the kids to the park, and then they have a picnic lunch, and then she brings them home and gives them this, exquisite dinner. And then she checks on them about after midnight. Her son gets up in the middle of the night to either use the bathroom or get a drink of water. And she goes to sleep. Eventually, she falls asleep. Well, in the morning, Alice goes to wake her children, and she notices that their window is open and the kids are gone. So the children are discovered the very same day that she reports them missing. Well, the day that they came up missing was actually July 14th. The day before was July 13th, and that's when they had the picnic, the picturesque day, like this perfect day. On the morning of July 14th, Alice discovers her kids missing and later reports them missing. Her daughter is found almost immediately, fairly soon. When Alice sees her body, she faints. And the detectives note that she didn't cry or she wasn't responsive. But I think it's important to mention the behavior of the detectives. The lead detective, Gerald, noted her behavior as odd, and he took one look at her, and I guess she was so pretty that he just determined that, she had something to do with the crime, and she was not behaving the way he felt like a grieving mother should. So here come the moral police and the literal police. They're one and the same. They're judging her about the type of company she kept in and out of her home. They talk to her neighbors, and the neighbors give a story that she's a great mother. She's good with the kids. She was having some problems with her ex. Just all like pretty standard things. So instead of them really taking a look at the father, they start to look at Alice first, because they determine that she's too pretty. She knows something because she's what they call a sex pod, and she's just in and out of men's beds. And for the 60s, that's just seen as like a sinister character. And they really kind of just judge her based off of her looks solely, and not so much as the what's going on in the case. So they begin to judge her first, and they couldn't really find any evidence to incriminate her. So Alice goes on trial in public opinion, and people just think she's guilty. She's seen out in the club shortly after her kids are found murdered. Her son was discovered 5 days later, so it took them a little bit longer to discover her son. And when they did discover her son, they checked the stomach contents of both children, and it was inconsistent to what Alice said she fed the children. So that was one inconsistency in her story. Another was the time of death versus the time that Alice said she saw her children last and how they were safe. So there were a couple, the main points of her story were being refuted by evidence. And her behavior was coming off guilty. But there was so much tainted evidence. These were like trying to frame her using an ex-lover that they were blackmailing to expose his bisexuality to his family. They just didn't do much in the way of actual police work. They didn't take photos at the scene. They didn't take police notes at the scene, which is very unusual for a murder, especially of children. They just didn't do a lot of work outside of, just counting on the public opinion and trying to get faulty evidence based off of, guys she had dated before. So they really didn't put a lot of police work into the case. What ends up ultimately happening, even though her husband takes the lie detector test and it proves that he's innocent, they go and later, for 2 years, they bug her phone, they put a wiretap on her, they try to trap her and record her for 2 years, and she's aware of it. So she never slips up or anything. She never says anything incriminating. The police go to her job to try to get her fired. Each time they go to her job, they get her fired by telling them that she's the woman who killed her kids, just all this kind of unethical stuff. And this is exactly why her convictions were being overturned. Not for lack of evidence, not because there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that she's guilty. It's because the police are overly invested in getting a conviction without doing it legally or doing it ethically. They're just trying to make something stick to this woman because she's physically attractive and they think that she's too sexually active for it. It is pretty much the case that kind of was like the Casey Anthony case before Casey Anthony was a person, because it was, it had the scandal, the mom wanting to get rid of the kids so she could live her life. It had all of these things. So the mother was convicted with no evidence. Alice was convicted by a jury of 12 men because they put her lifestyle under a microscope, and they said if she was capable of living like that, she was capable of killing her children, which I do not agree with at all. And there's really, to this day, no evidence of what happened to the kids. All of the leads that they had went cold because the police was just so focused on it being Alice that they didn't look into any other leads. And they brought in, to this day, no one really knows what happened to those children. Alice maintains her innocence, that she didn't kill her kids, and the police never proved their case because they were so focused on it being her that they didn't bother to prove that it was her. And I have mixed feelings on it because on one hand, everything that she did, all of the circumstantial evidence doesn't add up. Like what she said, she fed the kids, or, the time of death didn't add up. But they couldn't pinpoint the time of death. Like the time of death, they gave 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. And that could be any time. I mean, they're only a 2-hour window before Alice said she saw the kids alive last, before it could actually have been them dead. So one thing for sure is that the person who actually did kill those kids, whether it was Alice, her husband, her ex-husband, one of her boyfriends, a stranger. Whoever did actually kill those children knows exactly why and what they did. And they could still be at large. This happened in the 60s, so they could still be alive. But whoever did commit this murder was a sick individual. Like, they killed those kids and just dumped their bodies like trash. And however you may feel about her reaction, Alice's reaction, she doesn't owe anybody her grief, because grief can be a very private thing, and I don't think she owed the media anything. She didn't have to react a certain way. Those are her kids, and how that affected her was how it affected her. It's not our business. So ultimately, this case became very disturbing because of all of the elements. It was the court of public opinion. It was the lack of the police handling things professionally, them sabotaging her on a personal level, them telling her she was just too sexy to be a single mom. That was a lot of creepiness. There was also the way they handled her ex-boyfriend, and because he was a married man, and how they just viewed her. That put a lot of dark cloud over everything, the evidence and everything. So I just think this is a mystery. I think it's interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments of this case. I think I can link a document about it in the description box. But until next time, and let me know if you have a case that you want me to go over. But yeah, that's it. I'm out.